They have said to us, we're going to make a treaty for you, with you, and take care of you, build a hospital for you, and educate you, and make you a self-supporting people. They had divided us as a Shoshone Nation, as they call it. Shoshone Nation in this part of the continent was the biggest tribe at one time. They divided us into 6 different states and telling us, you cannot communicate with the other tribes. We believed that from the beginning because money, good talk, lots of BS, in other words. We fell for that. We cannot believe our government. We cannot trust what they're doing. They have told us a lie from the beginning. We're the native people as the guinea pigs from the beginning of it. They told us a lie by saying, we're going to make a peace with you. They never have done those things, what they have said to us. Little by little, they're taking our rights away from us, not just us. Everybody began to suffer out of this deal now. Remember what they have done here from the beginning. They try to take our food away from us. Some of us are going to be turned down by the doctors. Some of us are going to be turned down because you've got the wrong kind of insurance. If you're not living in your home, a HUD home they call it, they can take it away from you.
Our stories tell us this is where the Creator put us. The Western Shoshone belong here, and we will continue to stay and protect this country.
Had one of those cables.
The Shoshone hosts and supporters organized the Western Shoshone Defense Project Spring Gathering near Mount Tenebo. And a week later, the Stop Divine Strike action at the Nevada test site, where the Divine Strike bunker buster test was scheduled.
But just to let the people know that Western Shoshone folks, we don't want any kind of weapons being tested on our lands, because those lands are sacred lands and it's not supposed to be used for destruction.
From the beginning of it, maybe some of you people still remember, MX missile was tested in Utah Proving Grounds. We tried to do the best we could at that time, got together and tried to tell the Nuclear Energy Department, we don't want this to be tested here, the nuclear weapon on this land, but they didn't listen to us. In 1988, we had 11,000 people here at this location. Some of my people, some of your people, been thrown on the ground, drug on the ground, some of their ribs been broken. We still remember those things. 1988, at the Nevada test site, they said they wasn't going to test anymore at the Nevada test site. Everybody believed that, but they continued to test.
All the nuclear testing that's gone on out here, I think Shoshone country has been bombed more than any other country in the world. You know, we've seen the effects of the nuclear waste already with our people, getting cancers and other diseases.
There are portions of that test site that people can't go into for the next few thousand years, certainly not in our lifetimes or our children's lifetime. And they want to set a blast out there that is going to put that dirt into the air and blow down wind.
Weapons of mass destruction. Many of our indigenous people know what that is, from the smallpox infested blankets that was given to our people. Also the Gatling gun. Some of our people remember that Gatling gun. It just mutilated our people in our villages. From Sand Creek to Wounded Knee. Many areas, this Gatling gun and rudder represents the mentality of people, a weapon that tears into the flesh of our people. But now we have this invisible contamination. And what they do, the mentality of an industrialized society that has lost its teachings of what its relationship is to the earth.
They're telling us we're doing it on the native land because they keep telling us you are the ward of the government.
It's the spirit of resistance, the spirit of our ancestors. It's still here amongst us in this land. Think about all those that's gone before us. And we walk in honor of those that continue to struggle. We walk in honor of this land and pass this way of life on to our future generations.
The Divine Strike explosion was scheduled for the following week, postponed just before the protest, and later cancelled. This particular test was stopped, but testing the next series of nuclear weapons and bunker busters remains prominent on the Pentagon agenda.
You are the governing body. You are the one should have the voice, not the people that you selected. They're supposed to take your message among each other and work for all of us. But they're not doing it. Our leaders today telling each other's lies, now they're accusing one another. All they're doing is thinking about themselves. They want more money out of your pocket.
It's not based on life. It's not based on love. It's not based on peace. It's based on money. How much money can the multinational corporations make?
The prominent society knows the greed of people, and it's all for me. And we're not thinking about our Mother Earth. My understanding is the law of the land is we don't hurt one another.
And what I've been hearing about the mines got money, that's what they do, and it divides everybody up.
We only got two villages there on Haida Gwaii, Skidegate and Massett. We used to squabble amongst each other all the time, but then we start realizing, it's not getting us anywhere to fight each other. We got a common enemy out there. We've watched as logging companies took away our trees, our fish are getting depleted. Now they're looking at our oil reserves, and the price of gold's gone up again. We're going to have more fights on our hands over, the same problem you guys. We need our water, we need our fish. We don't need our rivers polluted from the acids and different chemicals that are used. So I see another fight coming up really quick, and maybe one day we might be relying on you guys for your help and for your support.
It's just interesting to see that since the Euro-Americans stepped upon this land, it's never ended there, and that they continue to buy off the Indian people, and that they continue, and the Indian people continue to believe the lies, or at least be complacent, or having to really deal with what the real issue is, or the real core is to know that their land, the land is who we are.
If we are going to have to live in a militarized world or be an empire or whatever you want to call it, It will happen as long as people don't get up and stand up and say enough is enough.
Gold mining pump out millions of gallons of water a day. In my way of life, our people have taught us water is sacred. It is life. And yet these gold mining companies, these big corporations, they have a right to destroy that life. Because the state of Nevada, who happens to own the water, they tell me, is giving them the right to do so. As we go through life, we see sacredness that's being on sale. Water should not be sold because water is sacred.
Shouting and making a lot of noise. This is the unacceptable face of freedom.
We see our air that is being contaminated again by gold mines, nuclear dumps, nuclear testing. We also see our lands being destroyed. Mining destroys large areas of land. I think I heard Rose say that they use cyanide. Recently, the state of Idaho and Utah are complaining about Nevada's gold mine and saying they are having mercury contamination, as from the gold mines.
Our belief always has been to take care of the Mother Earth, that we survive on Mother Earth. It provides us with all the goodies that we survive on, all the food that we can eat at one time off the land, all the medicine that we can use to heal each other at one time. Lots of clean water was here once before. A lot of animal life, bird life. They have said to us from the beginning, if you take care of me, I'll take care of you. So we have lived here probably 1,000,000 years on the land, took care of it. Praying for it is a very important part of our life.
We need to get back to our ceremonies. We need to start praying as an individual. I need to pray every morning, every day. And whenever I go out into the land, I need to pray for the pine trees so that they can continue to bear fruit. I need to pray for the cedar so that I will have cedar to offer the fire when I come to ceremony. I need to pray for the water, that the water will be clean.
As I reflect on the couple of days we've been here, I keep hearing this message. Keep doing your ceremonies.
I was reminded by one of our relatives that comes from Wind River. You notice starting yesterday in a lot of the presentations from everyone here is the religious and the spiritual aspects of this work that we do. When there is a formation of our indigenous peoples coming together to have one voice in protecting the sacredness of our Mother Earth around their environment, recognizing racism and environmental protection, recognizing we need to have a network. One thing as we went back home to consult with our spiritual leaders and our elders, they reminded us that our work, when you work for Mother Earth, is spiritual work.
This land, if we take care of it, it'll take care of us. If we don't take care of it, sooner or later, things are going to disappear from us, which we already began to see. The berries out there are disappearing, all different kind of berry that we have survived on for many, many years. The roots, different kind of roots, wild potatoes, wild onions, wild carrots, while of everything that was here on the land at one time. We've been saying since 1953, when they've been testing this nuclear weapon, things start to disappear. And I would say any direction you want to go, where there's a pine trees, where they knock down, nothing grown there but sagebrush. They try to seed it with some kind of wheatgrass, but it's not doing a bit of good. Nothing eats it. Not even the squirrels eats it. The animal life already began to show us. They're coming in down into our doorsteps now, the big, huge animals. They're warning us what can take place. Let's not let that happen.
If we don't come into peace and work on the earth, then the earth is going to destroy us, because we are not peaceful. We will be taken off the surface of the planet. But if we come into peace and work together as all nations, and work in a sacred manner, and talk about the earth, what's wrong, and heal the earth, then we are those people of the past who now have reawakened to this time period to work on the earth.
That's why our elders have always reminded all of us, no matter what culture, no matter what race, what class, is never forget what is your relationship to the sacredness of Mother Earth. To ask yourself that question. What is your relationship to the sacredness of Mother Earth? And to have responsibilities to take care.
For young Indigenous people, we face a lot of hardships, just like our fathers, our mothers, and grandmothers, because we're growing up in a colonial country. We're going to school in a public education system which itself is colonial, where we don't learn our own language. Its history class begins when the colonizers came, and where we learn about the heroes, the Indigenous heroes, the warriors, the people who stood up for their people as traitors, as rebels, as people who were just really not very significant. So we're growing up with lies. And many of us were either growing up on reservations, which are the poorest areas in the country. Young Indigenous people growing up in urban centers, which happens a lot for many of us, is because of colonization. What it does to us is it makes our parents have to go to the city to get jobs. It takes people off their traditional lands and into urban cities to make a living. As we're growing up disconnected from our land, disconnected from our culture. We're growing up not knowing our language, not learning from our elders, because our elders are far away. So we're growing up very isolated, even within major cities. Where we live, in Vancouver, the downtown east side is the poorest urban place in Canada. The downtown east side has the highest concentration of off-reserve Indigenous people. It also has one of the highest police presences in the city. We make up 3% of the population of Canada, but 17% of the inmate population. So the problems that we face, the hardships that we face, not only cause dysfunction in our lives, but we're also targets by the RCMP, the police, and by the racist institutions. The one thing that the government of Canada also does really well, I think, just like the U.S. does, is enforces the divisions between natives and non-natives and enforces the racism against Indigenous people. About 3 hours away from Vancouver, where we live, near Kamloops, there's a ski resort that was built on Secwepemc territory. And it was built on unceded territory and built on a mountain, polluting the rivers, chasing off the elk and the deer and the people's survival. People setting up protection centers, sweat lodges on these mountains where there's also a ski hill. What we've seen happen over the last 7 years is over 70 people have been arrested. Young people, elders, everyone. So there's been a lot of targeting of Native people who stand up for their rights, because it's something that the government itself is really afraid of, especially in British Columbia, because it raises the question for non-natives that this is 97% of the land belongs to Indigenous people legally, and the provincial government legally has no jurisdiction on this land. Much of Canada has gone through different treaties, Treaty 1, Treaty 2, many treaties for huge portions of land. But in British Columbia, there's only a few treaties. And there's only 3% of the land has been legally signed over to the government of Canada. They're enforcing Canadian and provincial laws on a sovereign people. Mobilization against war and occupation. We formed about 2.5 years ago to come out against the war in Iraq, the ongoing occupation of Iraq, the ongoing occupation of Afghanistan, and the many unjust occupations and wars that are going on around the world. But we also wanted to do something different than many anti-war groups do in Canada. And comes with the notion that somehow people in Canada think that Canada is a peacekeeper. One thing we do is we always bring it back to the foundation of Canada and the injustices that have been committed against Indigenous people. And when we talk about war and occupation and self-determination for Iraqi people, which is something I believe in, we can't isolate it from the fact that we're standing on stolen land, that we're standing on occupied land. We can't talk about justice for people in the Middle East in an abstract way without talking about sovereignty for Indigenous people here. So one of the main demands of our anti-war group is self-determination for Indigenous nations in Canada. Bringing the issue of Native struggle to the forefront of everything, because it is central to everything that happens in Canada.
Highway, highway, hey, 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 highway, highway, oh, hey, hey, oh, highway, highway, hey, 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 highway, 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 oh, hey, hey, oh, highway, highway, hey, 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 highway, highway. Oh, hey, hey, oh, on our way, highway, hey, hey, hey.
The Skull Valley Goshute Reservation is located in an area which has been designated as a waste zone by the state of Utah. The reservation has no marketable natural resources. The Goshute are forced to rely on economic development, which is consistent with the numerous waste, production, and testing facilities which surround the reservation. March 1968. In an open-air nerve gas test, chemical agents escaped, killing 6,000 sheep and other animals on the Skull Valley Goshute Reservation. The government dumped at least 1,600 of the contaminated carcasses on the Goshute Reservation, many in unknown locations, making the land unsafe for ranching. Duckway Proving Grounds is the primary U.S. chemical and biological weapons testing and training site. At least 1,635 open-air field trials or demonstrations with nerve gases were conducted between 1951 and 1969. Nearly 500,000 pounds of chemical warfare agents were spread into the air. Additionally, there were at least 328 open-air germ warfare tests and 74 radioactive dirty bomb tests. ABC testing and training continues. Passing into the neighboring valley, we find the Deseret Chemical Depot and chemical weapons and agents disposal facilities. 42% of the U.S. stockpile of chemical weapons and agent are stored at the south area of the Toeli Army Depot.
Đô cho cha chế hệ chế hệ chế hệ vì cho hệ Đô cho cha chớ vì chế hệ vì chế hệ chế Đô cha chế hệ chế hệ chế vì chế hệ
My name is Ophelia Rivas. I'm Autumn from both sides of the international border. My father's community is Juigurk, which means Rabbit Falls, and my mother's community is Arajuk, which means little clearing, on the United States side. Our territory ranges from north of Phoenix, which is now Phoenix, and all the way to Hermosillo, Mexico, and from the San Pedro River, which is east of here, to the Sea of Cortez. The tribal government is set up exactly like the U.S. system, and it's set up that way to be able to work together because it is a federal recognized tribal government. But there's also another form of government, which is the traditional form of government, and that group is called the Traditional Autumn Leaders, and they were kind of forced to also become a written form of government, whereas it was always just an oral tradition. But it is a traditional form of government where there's representatives from the communities and come together and make decisions, which include very traditional people and ceremony people as well. It started out that I was very angry about the Border Patrols doing fast chases into the community, my mother's community, and there's children walking around in the community, and they had total disregard for Altam people, total disregard for our lands and what we believe, and especially harassing us when we cross the border to do our ceremonies or to go to our communities on the other side. There's probably about 5 communities right along the border on both sides that are very close, and in my mother's community, it's just less than a quarter of a mile, and I'm the last house in the community, and if they bring the National Guard, they're going to be in my backyard, so to speak. Autumn Voice Against the Wall is advocating for the elders and the ceremony people that cross the border. I think that we are a thorn on the tribal government side because we are voicing these things, and we're coming out and talking about things that people are afraid to talk about. We remember the Border Patrol always being there. Off and on we may get stopped, and they know it's autumn, and they just wave us on. But after 9/11, we would get stopped, held at gunpoint, removed from our vehicles, interrogated as to our travel agendas, our nationality was in our vehicles. They would high-speed chase vehicles, tailgate chase vehicles, and push them off the road, and it just became a really dangerous situation on the border for the autumn. Maybe 5 years ago, the Border Patrol decided to funnel the traffic of the illegal aliens, they're calling them, into Arizona, and especially through autumn lands. The other important thing is that there is a drug traffic that's significant, and that does come through the Autumn Nation. Tribal government that's been collaborating with the Homeland Security, they agreed to put a detention center on the reservation to detain people coming across that are called undocumented people. They agreed to build a wall if they're going to seal off the entire international boundary, and a part of that is our places where we cross traditionally since the creation of this world. Then we have a problem with that. One of the elders spoke and said, that when the water runs, it does not recognize borders or a wall. Where's the water going to go, when there's a wall there? And it's the same with the autumn, because we're a part of this land, and we're not disconnected from the land. And we see it as a great violation upon who we are as O'odham people. Like in my mother's community, one of the politicians said that if the community didn't agree to building to support the wall, that Al-Qaeda was going to come and bomb the village. It's the people that are really afraid to talk about the abuse. There's a lot of retaliation within the communities from the politicians to behave and be good Indians and not make problems, you know. So if people voice their opposition to the Border Patrol, they get harassed and they get services denied. They want to reinforce monitoring or enforcement, or so they're sending the National Guard. This is the military. They're saying that sending the military officially, but unofficially, the military has always been on the reservation. They've been training there. They have flight plans already. There's specialized drug units and immigration and customs, and not only that, but our own tribal police, our own tribal rangers, our own tribal trackers, they're called.
The military, National Guard, so
number of agencies.
Sounds like an occupied territory, kind of.
It is an occupied territory. The reason why we're sitting here today is because it is a closed-off area. Media is not allowed unless they get special clearance from the administration, the tribal administration.
My name is Margot Cowan, and I'm with Derechos Humanos, No Más Muertes, No More Deaths. Well, we started down at Sassavie. It's on the Mexican border. We started last Monday, and it takes 6 days to get to Tucson. We'll get in tomorrow. There are many groups that are participating in coalition, and there are many individuals that just can't stand to see these people die in our community.
Desconocido. Presente. José Víctor Calderón. Presente.
This cross I carried the whole way is for Andrés Vizcarra. He was only 16 years old. You know, I'm thinking about Andrés' mom and how in the world she must feel to have lost her 16-year-old boy in the desert to a horrific death. When you're out here, your vital organs literally cook from the inside. You go crazy. You take all your clothes off, you run in circles, you see water, you dig in the sand and try and get some relief. You know, it's a horrific death. Every summer, by the end of the summer, migrants tell us they see bodies, they step on hands. It's a regular occurrence. You know, there isn't a pueblito in Mexico, there isn't a neighborhood in big cities that doesn't know some young man who came up and was never heard of again. If you look at the deaths and you look at where people die, they die, many of them, along the side of the road. Somebody had to drive by and see a hand. More people die in the Tucson sector of the Border Patrol than the whole rest of the border combined. Little Tucson sector. And this is purposeful. This is a policy that drives people away from the ports and out into the desert. One of the tactics that we take great exception to that the Border Patrol implements is something called dusting. And they take helicopters, Black Hawks usually, weapons of war, and they see a group from the sky, and they drop down, and they scatter up all the dirt and dust, and they form a perimeter. And as the migrants flee, they capture them, and often they beat them. The official tally since the mid-90s is about 4,000, but we believe that 10 more die for every one that's found.
The encroachment that's happening right now is in Mexico, severely encroached upon by Mexican ranchers, farmers, and now, when NAFTA came about, now it's corporations and miners that are encroaching upon our lands. There was a proposal a year ago to do a chemical waste dump in one of the communities, and I became aware of it in March, that this was happening, and we found out that it's going to be an industrial chemical waste dump that's going to be 240 acres of land, and the federal government and the state government of Mexico already approved the project, and the people there are not even informed of this project. The area is called Quitobac, is actually the place where we have our ceremony grounds, and it's the most sacred ceremony that's still alive today since creation, and that's a great impact on our people. It's well known that these kind of companies target traditional sacred spots, and especially Indian country all over in the United States. These corporations do target Indian lands to dump their waste on and these kind of things. It just goes back to, the genocide of our people, our Indian people. It just continues. Now it's a whole different type of, it's legalized genocide, because our people are dying of cancer, they're dying of all these ailments that's caused by these chemicals. I can only speak for the traditional people, and we all do speak our language, but there's a lot of young people that are not speaking, and I believe we are losing our language. I think it's everywhere because of the forced assimilation. Our people were also forced into boarding schools far away, and also forced to go to relocation. The whole families will be sent out as far as Chicago to assimilate, and some of these people really did assimilate, and they brought that back to the tribal reservation. So there's pockets of those kind of people, and then there's also people that are very traditional. Where I come from, I grew up with the elders. We grew up into ceremony life. Our himdak, which is our way of life, kind of mandates us to take care of this portion of our territory, which the Creator created us in this territory from this land here. And there's a lot of environmental damage. If the wind blows out there, it's just nothing but dust. Dust from all the broken ground that the border patrols are constantly, driving on. Summer's coming up now, and all these desert plants that are here, we're going to be harvesting their fruits, and we used to live like this. And now with the changing times, it's difficult for the young people to do those kind of things. In a very short time, we were forced to embrace a foreign government system. We were forced to try to understand this economic development system. We were forced to understand these things, and we don't completely understand them. So we're very reluctant in developing. And a lot of people don't want to develop. They want to remain who they are. We are here. We've been here since creation. We're here still, and he can try to manipulate us and try to kill us off systematically, forcefully, but it's the Creator that decided that we belong here, and we're going to continue to be here.
people, and we have like 19 different dialects in the Paiute language. In the Paiute tribe, we have 23 different bands. Our band name out here is from these two fish here, the Kuyui. So we call ourselves Kuyuitka. Miners came across in 1849, 1850, in that era. The local Indians, hunting and gathering, came upon these miners. They couldn't talk to each other. So what the miners did was they made gestures for water. And our name for water is Ba'a. But when you say this way, you say Yut. So they told them, Ba'a Yut, water this way. And now they divide us into Northern Paiute and Southern Paiute.
May 7th, there was an incident over in a place called Williams Station over in Silver Springs. There were two females that were taken from Pyramid Lake. They were out gathering somewhere along the river or up in the mountainside. Two brothers that owned the trading post kidnapped them, took them to Williams Station, abused them, held them captive. Well, this guy went over to do some trading. He heard the two ladies in the cellar, came back here, and got some young men. Were told they were looking for these ladies. So they went over to Williams Station, and then what happened, there was a confrontation. 4 or 5 people got killed. They brought the ladies back here. The word went out to Virginia City that the Paiute people from Pyramid Lake were out killing settlers. We gathered about 107 soldiers to come down here to get justice, they say, for the killings at Williams Station. During that time, it was spring, and the spawn was going on, like now. So there were a lot of other Indian people here. And actually, they were talking about war to begin with because of all the settlers coming in and squatting on land. And they were getting ready to put a stop to that. Anyway, the story goes is that they were led along the east side of the river and into a trap about 2 miles down from here. They didn't know what they got into. They tried to run. They couldn't get across the river. So they were coming back along this way. And finally, a few of them got away and went back to Virginia City. This tribe was big enough to fight off the soldiers that were coming back. And this was probably one of the largest victories that a tribe had against the military out here. They say in the Mountain West. That's something I think, you as young people should be proud of. There's a war going on in Iraq right now. People are getting killed, like women and children. And that happened down here. You had these soldiers coming in on the second wave of the battles. The first one, they came down to get revenge. They got killed, so they go back to Virginia City. So they gathered soldiers from all the way down San Francisco, Sacramento. They came back here with about 800 soldiers. And they came down the same way. It was a month later. They had howitzers, they had rifles, they had artillery. They were killing men, women, and children. They were trying to get rid of the people. And then what they do in the history books, they said, the second battle down here was they defeated the tribal people. That wasn't the case. They held them off to get the people out of here. After the battles, there was about a 10-year time frame where there was all this unrest going on. The soldiers came in and occupied, they set up Fort Churchill. They were trying to round up Indian people. They force-marched Paiute people from this part up around McDermott into Yakima, Washington. Because of all the unrest out here, the federal government wanted to set aside Pyramid Lake as a federally recognized tribe. And that happened in 1873 when this tribe was established, the boundary, which includes the whole lake. If those people didn't fight for this land, we wouldn't have the lake out here. Because most tribes, when the government came in, they just took everything.
The Reno metropolitan area population is growing rapidly. This massive suburbia is only 17 miles from Pyramid Lake.
So you uphold the social laws that turn against both age and youth. And you uphold the sickening lies that turn our eyes from living truth. So you uphold the scheming forms of market forces governing law. So you uphold the lust for gold, the greed dividing both rich and poor.
The Truckee River flows from Lake Tahoe through Reno and ends in Pyramid Lake. It is the main source of water for the larger Reno area. These industrial facilities are located along the Truckee River, not far downstream from Reno. Contaminant concentrations like arsenic, mercury, and selenium are much elevated downstream on its way to Pyramid Lake. Located about 25 miles downriver from Reno, the Derby Diversion Dam was completed in 1905. Derby Dam is part of the Newlands project. Since over a century, much of the Truckee River's water has been diverted for agricultural and electric power uses. This irrigation project near Fallon is named after Senator Francis G. Newlands. It uses much water from the Truckee and, to a lesser extent, the Carson River. The European farmers settled here never produced much, but even less today. They use much water for no good reason. The water diverted from its natural flow is misused to create this artificial green enclave in the desert. Pyramid Lake is slowly killed by reduced inflows of water from the Truckee River. Moreover, the water is heavily polluted by upstream users. The imposed priorities of the industrial mass society are not sustainable and not compatible with the health of Pyramid Lake.
My name is Wahala Johns. I'm with the Black Mesa Water Coalition. My clan is Salt Clan, Ashihan, and born for the Red Bottom people. Ashche, Ado, My maternal grandparents are the Towering House people, and my paternal grandparents are the Mini Goats people. Black Mesa Water Coalition formed in 2001 to address the water use, our aquifer in Black Mesa being used in a coal slurry pipeline process for generating electricity to the Mojave Generating Station. It's been used for about over 30 years. For us, our work started just to raise awareness in the student organizations here in Flagstaff, Arizona. But also we came from communities from Black Mesa, from Pinon, from Forest Lake, from Shanto, which are communities that all rely on the N aquifer, the Navajo aquifer. But also we came together with the Hopi, young Hopis, from Cocotes Mobi, from First and Second Mesa, and in a unifying effort of young people talking about our future. It's significant, I think, because we've had so much dispute between our peoples, between the Dene and Hopi people, because of relocation. In 1974, there was this Relocation Act defining whose land is who within the Executive Order of 1882. As a result of the 1974 Relocation Act, there was approximately 12,000 Navajo families, and I think about 100 Hopi families that were relocated off their ancestral homelands. Growing up, for me, it was there was always this anger towards the Hopis, that you can't trust them. You know, they're like this, and then to come to this group or meet these young Hopi people within our organization, you know, we had a lot of discussions about like what this Relocation Act meant to me. My father's family had been relocated where he was born. All of his farmlands were taken, and for no compensation. And right now, we haven't had any kind of form of compensation. To come and talk to young Hopis was very difficult at first, but the more we talked about it, the more we understood that this was a larger part of a plan that the federal government, corporations, and money played in. There's coal deposits, there's other resources, water, there's many resources that lie beneath Black Mesa. So the traditional Hopi and the traditional Dene, they always supported one another. It was the governments that kind of are the ones that were always fighting too, and that created this division. My homelands, from the nearest mining area, we could see it maybe less than a couple miles away. The springs around Hopi and some springs around Black Mesa were drying. So this sent alarms out to a lot of communities that we have to say no more use of our groundwater for this industrial purpose. Whether it's exploration, extraction, the combustion, the waste, there was environmental degradation happening at every stage in life cycle of coal or oil. It's a form of even environmental racism. We've been meeting with many communities that have been affected by coal-fired power plants and that have seen a high level of asthma, high level of mercury, and what mercury does, how does it travel as it bioaccumulates, you know, through land, water. So we know the effects of a power plant, and there's no such thing as a clean coal technology. Our tribe has been, you know, coal-dependent, oil-dependent economy. That, you know, that's what they fall into, that pattern. We have some relatives that are very supportive of protecting our water, and then we have mine workers that are very angry at us. Coal is the liver of Mother Earth that has a function to cleanse, oil as well. So does water. And for us to mine it, for us to use it in harmful ways, it is not the way that we should be as human beings. We stand in solidarity with the local communities that are in opposition of this new power plant, our proposed power plant. Black Mesa Water Coalition and other groups, we always try to make sure our people have a say in the decisions that are being made. That is key in any kind of, when you're working with Indigenous peoples and their lands, that you can't come in from the outside and tell the people what to do, or, you know, after the fact a decision's been made and, you know, tell them this is what's going to happen. all of this technical information and the process of even a proposal happening in your community, whether it's expansion of a mine or water quality, and all this is very technical information, but being sensitive to our grandmas and grandpas out there that have sheep, that haul water, every day or every other day for their livestock. That information needs to be translated, in our language, and it needs to be relayed in a good way. As of December 31st, 2005, the Mojave Generating Station closed, as well as the Black Mesa mine in Black Mesa. That's half of the mining activities that's happening up there. We found out that just from them closing down, they could sell their sulfur dioxide allowances for about $1,300 a ton, equaling like 20 to 30 million a year that they can receive in revenues just for closing. Black Mesa Water Coalition, Indigenous Environmental Network, and the Grand Canyon Trust Sierra Club. We had this idea that taking this money and reinvesting it into our communities, into something that is going to be long-term and help our communities transition. And it's called a Just Transition Plan. I guess our main focus within the past several months has been trying to include our grassroots, communities and our out there in Black Mesa region about this plan, and so that they know first what we're trying to propose. This Western system that was enforced on us to idolize money and to pretty much prove that money is controlling, our path. We're trying to challenge that and find ways that we can work together and bring community back together. And it's pretty much up to us to try to find that healing and that balance and that responsibility that we have to one another, despite our differences. Whether it's building a house out of mud, clay, sand, and without a big budget, building a bread oven, planting seeds during the spring so we can have a good fall harvest. All of these techniques and life ways that our people have survived for thousands of years, and we're a matriarchal society, within our community. So when you go to these community meetings, usually the women are all up in the front, these meetings, and the men are in the back, and they pretty, they kind of run everything, and it's amazing to see, because that's how we are as people, and that nurturing part of our family really comes out, and so that voice comes out, and so you'll always hear it, reminding everyone that, as mothers, as grandmothers, that we always have to take care of one another. We always have to be careful in how we, develop, and be careful in how we plan for the future.
The San Francisco Peaks are sacred to 13 Native American tribes, who strongly object to any development on the mountains. Ignoring the concerns of the indigenous peoples, widespread recreational use began in the 1930s. After a long struggle in the 1980s, snowball tourism was greatly expanded. Depending on snowfall, between 30 to 180,000 visitors are counted every year. A new major expansion plan is currently advanced by Arizona Snowball and the U.S. Forest Service. They want to cut more forest, claim more space for tourism, and use Flagstaff city wastewater for snowmaking. These plans are met with much protest from a coalition of tribal and other people. In March 2007, the U.S. Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals ruled in favor of the tribe's claims under the Religious Freedom Restoration Act. This is no final ruling against snowmaking on the peaks. It's not about expansion plans in general, but nevertheless a victory for the tribes.
The animals that are truly native to our continent, besides the horses, are the buffalo. and the horses and buffalo lived side by side together. And the buffalo were the mainstay of food for the traditional people in our country, for the indigenous people. There was an onslaught against the buffalo and against the wild horses. And millions of buffalo were killed, and nearly 2 million wild horses were eradicated from our country. We furnished the landscape with cattle, and cattle are not indigenous to our country. They sit in one area and eat all the grass, and then it's too damaged to be able to come back again. When you watch a wild horse population or a buffalo population, they're never in an area for longer than maybe 20 minutes, and they're off that grazing area. And if you watch them graze and you see how much grass they've eaten, they leave more than 50% of the plant. So it's very important to understand what happens when you take the native animals off their native habitat area and transplant them with other non-native animals, because it just doesn't work out in many cases. For now, on public lands, we have had a deterioration of those lands for the last 100 years, to the point that they have never been in an upward trend, but they're always in a downward trend as far as grazing goes.
Regardless of the situation, the reality and circumstance we arrived at, up to this point in time of dominant history and its ill-gotten revisionism, could lead the sheeple into believing that what we are doing to the earth is the only remaining choice surviving. Capitalism, disguised in experiential democracy and its patriarchies, is showing signs of a lost investment. We must not examine the cost in body bags, body counts, nor stock exchanging itself into the illusion that monetary value is the epiphany of so-called civilized minds. This mindset has given itself the privilege to establish immortality by destroying the very sustenance that derives life, as human beings know it. It is human to only think of the human evolutionary process as elite to all life, the very political process we are demanding from each nation to nation across this earth to whom we belong, especially the alternative class, is exactly that. It is in the word alternative. Alternative to what? Why change the native way when it is a tried and true continuation simply because it works? No matter what anthropological theories abound within the confines of convincing you that the scientific rationale translates only rhetorical religiosities which compromise nothing but spirit. If we really get a fix, a reality fix, on who we are and where we think sanctimonious technology is taking humankind, and if we as indigenous peoples with indigenous thinking processes, which includes you, are going to be in this 7th generation, then let's face it, regardless of the situation, we are not alone, we are not inherently intelligent, we are only a strand in the web of life. You have heard it before, this is not a cliche for another boring drill to wake up. This is an urgent necessity, a dire need that you, as an individual, take the responsibility of maintaining the earth life.
Our goal now is to take 8,000 horses that are threatened with slaughter because of a rule change in Congress that was slipped into legislation. The government decided that they're spending too much money on the horses. Any horse over the age of 10, the government could now sell to slaughter, and any horse that was not adopted in 3 tries would go to slaughter. There's a good possibility that all of these horses over in the next 5 years will become that age and will be eliminated. So it's important for us to take these 8,000 horses that are threatened and will go to slaughter, and we started with a project about 1.5 years ago to traditionally bring them back to the tribes again and do it in a very traditional, spiritual way. The nice thing about bringing the horses back, this is part of a prophecy that many of the tribes believe, that they've been without horses for 100 years. And when we brought the first group of horses back here in 2001 and gave them to the tribe, we had a ceremony that was given by Chief Orville Looking Horse. And during that ceremony, they sang a horse song that was never sung before in over 100 years. And so it was really very meaningful. And it was so beautiful to see because those horses went into a buffalo pasture. And on top, all the buffalo congregated. And they were in somewhat of a semicircle up on top watching the ceremony from below. And as the horses were released, they stood very quiet and still, never took a mouthful of grass at all up on top of the hill while the ceremony was going, and the singing and the drums and so forth. And when the horses were released out to where they were, the buffalo just simply turned and began to walk away. It was the most beautiful experience to see what happens, because the buffalo and the wild horses roamed this land for a long time together. The Lakota people believe, as I do, that the horses are sacred, and they're called Shumta Wakan, which means mysterious dog. Literal translation now is sacred dog, because the term for God is mysterious one. So it just means that this is a mysterious dog, meaning that this is a sacred dog, because Wakan means sacred. Peace and good things are to happen again when the horses and the buffalo and all of these animals come back to the indigenous people here. The indigenous people believe that the horses never disappeared from our continent, and they said as long as we have lightning and thunder, that the horses are there because they are in the clouds with the lightning and the thunder. And if we had no lightning and thunder, then there would be no horses.
My name is Charmaine Whiteways. Zungarobaga Amachake. My Lakota name, one of my Lakota names is Little Wise One that makes a mark. Our treaty territory covers all of western South Dakota, parts of North Dakota, Montana, Wyoming, and Nebraska. And that's the 1868 treaty territory. Our 1851 treaty territory goes down into Kansas and Colorado also. When that last treaty was made, the 1868 treaty was made, our ancestors knew that that was the last amount of land that could sustain us as a nation. In 1980, the Supreme Court decision, they wanted to give us $105 million, and we said no. The Black Hills are not pursuing. So they put the money in a bank, and it's drawing interest. And this is one of the reasons why they allow the Indian Reorganization Act tribal governments to go into so much debt, and particularly the Oglalas who tried to go into so much debt, is then they can force them either to go under bankruptcy or go under receivership of the Bureau of Indian Affairs and force them to take the money. Just like when they were trying to force the IRA government onto the people in 1934, there's an elder woman always tells us a story about what happened to them. And that was that the police or the feds would come and confiscate all their food out of their cupboards. They would confiscate their food until they agreed in 1934 to have the IRA tribal governments in place. Different places, like at Pine Ridge, they made them vote twice, and twice they said no, but they just forced it on them anyway, on us. And right now, I say we are on the brink of extinction. And our people suffer many kinds of diseases because we're not out in the sunshine as much as we should be. We don't get to touch the earth or be close to the earth like we should. We don't get to go to the sacred places that we need to do. And especially we don't get to eat the food that we have to have. And one of those foods, the main one for Teton people, is a buffalo. We can't have that. It's very expensive to buy. I always say they are illegally occupying our territory, similarly to their occupation of Iraq right now. And they kill off the people of Iraq with bombs and guns, which they did to us. But they're also killing us off psychologically, mentally, by changing us from being Teton into being brown Americans. And so our numbers are dwindling, the number of Teton people. This colonization has occurred. You know, they took the children away to boarding schools, all these horror stories of everything that happened. But by calling them reservations, they took away the real title. They were created as prisoner of war camps. And that's what we need to keep remembering. These are prisoner of war camps. We are really occupied people. And as long as we remember that, then we remember who we are. We are prisoners of war. We are occupied people. I am Titoan. I come from the Titoan nation. Defenders was created 4 years ago because of a federal rider that was passed to open up the last 3% of the Black Hills to logging. They've already logged 97% of the Black Hills 2 or 3 times. And the last 3% was a wilderness area and 2 roadless areas. They did destroy some archaeological sites. We already know that. They clear-cut a whole wide swath all around one of the roadless areas. We don't know how many sacred sites or burial sites they destroyed in that process. But that was the catalyst to get many people together. There was no organization that really had tribal people connecting with environmentalists or others who were concerned about the environment of this region. The one thing that we do, every single project we start, is we have to have prayers first. Everything we do, we try to follow our culture, Titoan culture, and those non-tribal people who work with us or who are involved with us also support the way that we choose to do this work. We stopped the shooting range from being built near Bear Butte. We stopped the logging project in the northwestern corner of the Black Hills. It's been consistent in our message. It's doing things with prayer.
My name is Wachiniwash Day. It's good from my grandfather's name, and my colonized name is Garber, my first name. I introduced myself, I'm a Galala Sioux by enrollment. I grew up in a little village called Wolf Creek, which is on the Pine Ridge Agency. Wolf Creek was named after Chief Black Wolf of the Cheyennes when they had their breakout in Fort Robertson, and they had their long journey back from Oklahoma. So that area is the Tiosh by the Matho Luta, the Red Bear clan area.
How long are you involved in the struggle to defend the Black Hills?
Ever since I was born. I say that because, like my grandfathers, my grandmothers would tell us these things, and we hold on to those things, and we used to think there's got to be a way. When we see all this development, all this stuff going on, 1868, we just allowed them to pass through, and they violated it by staying and finding that gold, and they went crazy over all that gold, and today they're still going crazy over our land, our beautiness, and they're destroying it at the same time. We were always told it's sacred. Try to protect it, try to keep it, because this is our land base, and if we lose this, we are no longer a people. I was born in 1955, and I remember a lot of my ancestors, they gathered on weekends. They'd come in wagons and trucks and pitch up tents, and they'll be singing and having sweats. During the afternoons, we'll sit under the brush harbor, and many of the elders would be telling us stories about the Black Hills, how sacred it is. They always tell us, grandchild, remember that you're Tituan, you are somebody. Don't let nobody tell you you're nobody. You are somebody, you're Tituan. Why we say they're sacred is because we experience spirituality. We live with it. We are born with it, and we know what it is. And a lot of people don't know what it is, so they kind of laugh at us like it's hocus pocus, whatever. But we grew up knowing these things, and we respect those things because there's meaning to them. It's the law of nature. By law of nature, we organize, our tribe's been organized through the law of nature. We respect nature, and that's who we call Wakantanka, the sacred being, or the sacred being within us. It's in all things, all living things. The corporations, the state is illegally here in our territory, in our 1851 territory. They're illegally occupying our territory and taking all the resources out. So we're actually making this country rich by our resources. My uncle says, there's a story where he said they named the devil. He came to steal, kill, and destroy. But he came with different names. But today, he says his name is White Man, with the government. So he's just came to steal, kill, and destroy. That's what he did. And they did it in the name of their God. China, Christianize us. So prayers is what's keeping us going. That's the only thing that's strong for us. That's all we got left.
Hello, my name is Janice Bad Horse Larson. I'm from the Cooley-Chacha, Lower Brule, South Dakota. I guess I'll talk about a little bit about my reservation. The IRA government, the 1934 Act government, has really colonized our people. In the 1950s, they built a dam located on the Missouri River. It was called the Big Bend Dam. And we were in a taken area, and we had to relocate our town, our reservation, our graves, everything. Everything was destroyed. Didn't even give them a chance to get their things out. They could have built it somewhere else, but they chose the reservation. There was 2 reservations that had to move. The one across the river called Crow Creek, and our reservation, Lower Brule. One of our elders was put in a nursing home, and she was very traumatized by this, fearing the Corps of Engineers because they burnt her home, and she was always scared they were coming. We were all people that lived in the country, and they put us all in this cluster site. We didn't know our neighbors, Our graves were moved, and I'm sure some of them were left behind. Few of us that are left today, a handful, that lived along the river. Now they made it into a big old lake, but there's a lot of fond memories under that water. When our old folks were moved from the down, it seemed like our culture died too. They teach the language in our schools, but they don't, the older people don't use it, They're too colonized. Today that water is polluted because the uranium mines up in the rivers that run into it is the Morrow River and the Grand River.
And people eating the fish.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's deformed fish, and they've been finding deformed fish and all that.
And is that the water source, the drinking water source?
Yes. I don't drink the water myself. I have an 86-year-old mother, and I make sure she don't drink that water. I purchase bottled water for her.
Which is expensive too.
Yeah. Yeah, we're very poor. We see all this destruction going on with the environment, from the tourism, from the mining, from the logging, from the housing development, from all of these things happening. The dams along the Missouri River, the polluting with agricultural pesticides, and radioactive pollution from abandoned uranium mines. All of the waterways in our treaty territory have been affected. We didn't find out until just this past year that in 1972, then President Richard Nixon signed a secret executive order declaring our treaty territory to be a national sacrifice area to radiation. Probably more than 1,000, we don't know how many for sure, abandoned open pit uranium mines. We found out about 89 abandoned uranium mines 2 years ago. That's where we started, and that was up in the northwestern corner of South Dakota. These uranium mines were built in areas where the soil is very, very soft. And so it's very easy for the wind to pick up this microscopic radioactive dust. And it's very easy for the rain and snow to carry these radioactive sediments down from these little bluffs into waterways. And those waterways are the Grand River and the Morrow River.
On the Grand River are 3 villages that have been drinking the water for 40 years, bathing in it, washing their clothes. One of the villages on the Grand River currently still drinks that water. Those people have been drinking that water for all these years. They have high incidences of cancer, of tumors, birth defects, and miscarriages.
My name is Gutne Gojunt, and it's an Oneida name for She Dips Water. It's a Wolf Clan name. And I'm from the 32-acre Oneida community in Oneida, New York. I'd like to say a few words about how in America the Native American people are denied human and civil rights right across the United States and even Canada for that matter. And I guess I'd like to share a quick story with the people about my friends in Northern California at the Redding Rancheria. Their name is called the Foreman family, and their story is very similar to Oneida, how our people were displaced and on a small piece of land for many years without anything, barely existing as a people. And then over the years, their tribe, they're called the Pit River Indians, they got a casino in, and the families that lived there for many, many years on that land seen the corruption that the casino brought, and they spoke out, you know, in their community and wanted accountability. And what happened was the casino leadership disenfranchised 78 members for trying to bring justice and corruption to the forefront. And on their basis for cutting off 78 members of their family, they said they couldn't prove that they were from that nation, and they required them. The leadership required that family to do all these things, which they just pulled out of their hat. And one of them was to exhume their great-grandmother or their grandmother to do a DNA test, and that was very hard to lose your citizenship just at someone's whim. You get all your benefits denied. And so they went and did that, and they went before their leadership, their tribal council, and the evidence that they were related to their grandmother was 99.9%. And so the tribal council paid, with the casino money, other members in their tribe money to vote them off the enrollment or off the citizenship list. What type of feelings that our children and families have to go through, because there's no help anywhere. You get in a certain mind frame like helplessness, and so you wonder why our kids are drinking and doing drugs, and it's what is the world showing them? What's important? It's money, and at what cost?
How many Oneida have been disenfranchised?
Early on in 1995, May 21st, when we had the March for Democracy, I believe there was over 150 Oneidas, and that would be about 1/3 of our population. And a lot of them went back before the dictatorship to sign a paper that they wouldn't speak about the Oneida Nation ever again, and they'd have to do whatever they wanted. And they live under police rule with the nation cops spying on you. It's well documented. That's what they do to Oneida citizens, since they've been in the newspaper. So there's a great sense of fear. Everybody's afraid to speak, although they know it's wrong. They don't want to lose their home. They don't want to lose their college benefits, their health and education, whatever they give.
And you went to the courts, the U.S. courts in the end, and they actually didn't provide any help or any kind of remedy.
No remedy. They said because we were not in physical custody, but when they took Danielle to Pennsylvania, the casino cartel, she could have invoked the habeas corpus, but they released her. It was like a catch and release game. So they could take us and put us in prison, but by the time we could get into the federal courts and get the paper, they'd release us. Basically, they say they leave it up to each individual tribe to protect the human and civil rights. But what happens when the tribe itself or the corrupt leaders are the ones doing it? There's no recourse.
Still, we talk about a BIA government, right?
Right. It's all about money. It's all about big money, casinos. How much money can I make? And I don't care at whose expense. Where there's big money, there's always corruption. I'm not saying that casinos haven't helped the Indian people, but what it's brought in is confusion. No longer is our culture, our heritage, our language, our ceremonies, what's sacred to us, it's not important anymore. And that's playing right into what the federal government wants. They want to say, you don't have your language, you don't have your ceremonies, you're not a distinct people anymore. Now you can become brown Americans. They've been trying to do that for 500 years. Arrows, the American Indian Rights and Resource Organization, has over 16 states that have disenfranchised Native Americans. And recently there's some that have been added from Massachusetts and Maine. So, I mean, it's spread like wildfire. And see what happens when a corrupt tribe can disenfranchise their citizens. Their payments, if the tribe gives out money from their casino, the other tribal members get their per cap or their payments go up. And so it's all about greed, and it's very scary because I, as a human being, don't believe any amount of money is ever worth giving up your heritage or your identity. I don't need a bunch of clowns to tell me, well, I'm an Oneida or not. I know I have my Indian name. I grew up where I am. And it's just like, who is any person to say, well, you're no longer a citizen? What the Oneidas who won't speak out, and other Indians, or any human being that don't speak out on this issue, if it happens to me, it's going to happen to you. What protection do they have? What if someday they say something that they don't like, they look at the wrong person, they don't agree with, boom, your citizenship's gone. Now, what can they do? Not one doggone thing. Or be humiliated, or be told, I'm going to put you on probation for 10 years to see if you're an Oneida. I don't want that, and I don't want to live in fear all my life, and so that's why I've taken a stand to speak out.
That is one of the things that the Indigenous people always think about is the future generation. It is supposed to be our job to see that the world that they come into is safe and sound. That is the job of the Indigenous people, is to see that the earth is kept clean, the environment is clean. Because we're always told to think about the future generations that's yet to come. Your children, your grandchildren, the grandbabies that's yet to be here.
Think about the younger ones. How are they going to survive? We already began to lose our medicines that was put here by the nature, the food that was put here, the roots of all different kinds. Now they're drying up because we, the people, is not praying for their life to continue. And I think this is what we're trying to be teaching our young people today, like our forefathers have done. They talk about those things day and night, seemed to me, like when I was young.